Hey, what's up? We're here in Town Square in Las Vegas, and I'm here with...
I'm Alyssa, and I'm here to talk about the SpaceX plan and how it's going to go.
We're talking about the interplanetary transporter, so check it out. So Alyssa, you're a dentist, right?
Studying to be a dentist.
Okay, don't judge the crooked teeth.
Don't worry about it. I won't.
So what got you interested in dentistry?
Actually, when I was growing up, I had braces, and I loved the experience, everything about it. I don't know, I even wish right now I still had braces.
Do you not like peanut butter?
I love peanut butter.
Yeah, I thought you couldn't eat that with peanut with
You totally
braces.
can. There's a whole bunch of myths, and honestly, none of it is true. You can eat pretty much anything.
Alright, so you should have Alyssa as a dentist. She will let you eat anything.
I will.
How long have you been in Vegas?
I've been in Vegas for about a year now. I moved to Vegas from this really little small town, kind of like a little dairy area, and I was about an hour away from Vegas.
And you're originally from Texas?
Yep, I was born and raised in Texas. A little town called Mesquite right next to Dallas.
Okay. What's your favorite place in Vegas?
My favorite place in Vegas would probably the Fashion Show Mall.
Fashion Show Mall? Do you think they'd let us film? You think they'd let us film there?
No, I do not think so.
So, our producer got kicked out of the Fashion Show Mall because he was wearing a Brazzers t-shirt. And they thought he was like recruiting girls for Brazzers.
Oh.
And so like literally the security guy came up to him and he was like, "Excuse me, sir, you're not allowed to solicit here." And like he was literally just like buying things.
Oh my God.
SpaceX has just proposed a super ambitious plan that Alyssa and I were talking about. So for those of you at home who aren't aware, on Tuesday, Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, proposed this plan. And so the basic sketch of it is they're going to launch a huge spaceship, maybe with 100 passengers on board, into low Earth orbit. And they're going to refuel the ship in space with several trips and then blast off to Mars and get there in roughly 3 months. And the whole crux of this plan is that these spaceships with roughly 100 people can be sent on a regular schedule so that we can actually send enough people to colonize Mars and to actually establish a city and a human presence.
Okay, so what happens when you land on the planet?
Okay, well, first you're gonna have to establish some sort of base, and we're gonna have to establish means of producing the things that we need for basic survival. So we can list them. So we need oxygen to breathe because air isn't free on Mars. We're also gonna need water, food, shelter, and that's pretty much it. So it's those four things. So in the short term, we can produce them kind of in a more like controlled way. So imagine you have like a habitation module. You can produce just oxygen for the habitation module. And likewise, if you're producing water, well, you don't actually need that much water per person if you're being conservative. If we're just a small community, we don't need actually that much water. So what would be a good estimate of water per person?
I would say it really depends. You're supposed to drink 8 ounces of water a day.
Okay. They're gonna be like super thirsty on Mars and drink all the time. I think they estimate something like ridiculous, like 1 liter of water per person when you're on the ship.
Okay.
That's like NASA usage.
Yeah.
Okay. When they're trying to design like a space station. But you can imagine if you want to make life reasonably comfortable, you'd want way more.
Yep.
But it's still gonna be a small amount compared to living on Earth. And so then there's food. If we're a small community, we don't need that much food either. But long term, we would actually want to transform the planet so that it's more Earth-like, so that we're not living in poverty on Mars and have to like ration water and ration air.
So do you think we're gonna have to keep going back to Earth and back to Mars with necessities?
So in the short term, we'll definitely have to send lots of material from Earth to Mars. So in terms of, say, food, if we can't produce enough food in the short term, we should definitely send some food from Earth. likewise, we should send lots of things that are going to be hard to manufacture in the short term. So for example, say solar panels. We can one day manufacture them on Mars, but in the short term, it would be better to have more power that we can just install these solar panels right away without having to come up with a manufacturing capability of having them on Mars. So in the short term, yes. In the long term, we definitely want to just be able to make everything on Mars. So let's say, what would be a good example? So I guess you could imagine the long-term goal would be to terraform Mars. Okay, so to make it more Earth-like. So there's a couple of aspects to the planet that we need to make it more Earth-like. Okay, so one is to have water that's readily available. So the Mars water right now is trapped in the regolith. So it's frozen and trapped in the ground. So we'd have to be able to raise the temperature of Mars to melt that water and then be able to produce an ocean.
Raise the whole temperature of the atmosphere?
Yeah, like imagine global warming, but on Mars.
Wow.
Okay. The other thing that we'd want to do is increase the pressure of the atmosphere on Mars. So right now, the pressure on Mars is like 1% of the Earth pressure. And so that's really bad because when the pressure is really low, you can't go outside without a spacesuit. So the pressure out in space is basically zero. Okay, so if there's any kind of like gas, it's just gonna outgas away and you'll die.
Yeah.
On Mars, it's not as bad because it's like 1% the pressure of on Earth, but it's still too low to be able to just go out and walk around. Okay, so you've seen this on the Weather Channel. They say like, oh, the pressure's like 101 kPa. Right? So that's the pressure of the atmosphere. That's basically like there's all this air on top of us and it's pushing down. Okay? That's the weight of the air. So on Mars, it's like 1% of that. It's like 1 kPa. So if we could raise it up to 30 kPa, then it would be safe to go outside in Mars and you wouldn't die. You'd still need oxygen tanks because the Martian atmosphere is carbon dioxide, so we can't breathe it. But you wouldn't die from the pressure being too low. So you can think of it as like multiple steps for transforming Mars. So first, we start with like 1 kPa of atmosphere, and then you can't go outside without a spacesuit. Then we raise the pressure to like 30 kPa. Then we can go out in not a spacesuit, just like regular clothes, but we need like oxygen tanks to be able to breathe. And then like much later, we can imagine raising the oxygen content high enough so that we could just breathe normally without tanks.
Okay, do you think if we mess with sort of the components of what makes the planet, it would sort of mess up the planet at all, or?
Well, the way I think of it is there's nothing living there already.
Yeah.
So like it's not like on Earth where we can say, oh, like let's raise the temperature of Earth so that we all have like vacation homes. Like that could fuck up a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because there's already lots of life, lots of biodiversity. But Mars basically has nothing. So the way I think of it is it can only get better.
True.
We want to raise the atmospheric pressure on Mars from 1 kPa to 100 kPa. So you can imagine doing that in a couple of steps. So the first step would be, imagine you melt all the ice on Mars. So the estimate is that could raise us from 1 kPa to 30 kPa. So that would be a huge improvement because now the new Martians, they wouldn't have to wear spacesuits when they go outside. They could just carry around an oxygen tank. After that, we'd want to go one step further. We want to raise from 30 to 100. Now, how we do that, no one really knows yet. One way might be to start planting trees, because once you're at 30 kPa, plants can survive in that low pressure environment. This has already been tested here on Earth. And so the idea is, if we melt the poles, get up to 30 kPa, then we could just go Johnny Appleseed on the planet and just plant like a shit ton of plants. And then the plants are going to extract the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, produce oxygen.
Yeah.
And then we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll produce enough oxygen and will also raise the pressure. So it's not a problem for our generation, but for the next, 5 or 6 generations, they'll be able to work on this.
Yeah, when you think about it in the long run, it'll be very beneficial.
Like, if we think about it like in terms of us as a civilization, 10,000 years we've been kind of like building cities.
Mm-hmm.
If in the next couple hundred years we colonize another planet, it's like a huge improvement.
It's a huge milestone.
Huge milestone. Like, I'm super excited to be living right now.
Yeah, in the era where this can be happening.
So would you go to Mars? One-way ticket?
If I had the money.
The SpaceX plan is 200,000. So
Yeah.
it's basically like sell your house and go to Mars is kind of the idea.
Well, essentially, we'd be moving either way, so selling a house wouldn't be too big of a problem if you plan on staying there.
Unless you live in San Francisco, then you can send all your friends as well if you sell your house.
How long do you think it will take to melt the ice caps?
Let's say 100 years, because I think 10 years is probably too short and 1,000 years is too long. So let's go like in the middle. So we'll estimate like 100.
Okay.
So it might be 200, it might be 100, it might be 50. We did a pretty good job here on Earth melting the ice caps.
And then how would we melt them on Mars?
So we can't actually use the trick that we're using here on Earth, which is global warming, by burning fossil fuels. We'd have to do something else. So one idea would be we could build mirrors in space to focus the light of the sun onto the ice caps. And that could start the melting. And the idea is that water is actually a greenhouse gas. And so the more water that we release into the atmosphere, the more heat from the sun gets trapped on the planet. And so it's actually going to heat up the planet, and it's positive feedback. And so the more water we melt, the more ice melts. And so it's going to actually speed up and speed up.
So how would you get those mirrors in the atmosphere in general?
So imagine sending up a satellite that's kind of like a flower. So you like send it up, and in space it like opens up, and there's just like all these mirrors that focus all the light of the sun onto the poles. So it looks something like that.
Yeah.
For real, this is kind of like a problem for like the next generations. Like, our generation is just, how do we get all these people there living in, special conditions where, there's oxygen in their like habitat, and, they grow enough food so that they don't have to ship it from Earth.
Yeah.
Well, the next generation, they can figure out, well, how can their kids not have to be stuck living inside all the time? And how can they make the planet more Earth-like? So like the same way that our grandparents could never have predicted what an iPod was, like we can't predict how that generation is going to figure out how to heat the planet. It's like a 21st century problem, or a 22nd century problem.
So I think it'll be pretty beneficial for the planet Earth in general because we're going to be getting a lot less pressure off of our planet.
Do you think? So I think that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that now we have like 2 copies of humanity, maybe we'll appreciate more what we have on Earth because we're gonna realize it's really special, and maybe we won't just take a shit on it all the time.
He's sweating. Wow, you're sweating.
Yeah, I'm the hot physics guy. It's really hot in Las Vegas. Okay.
Sure.
My foundation's coming off. Okay, I have to reapply.
Need some setting spray.
I don't even know what that is. Alright, so I know it sounds like a total shithole, but would you go to Mars? At least for the experience.
Just to have the experience, of course, yeah.
So Elon also promised that it's going to be a free return journey after a couple of years of living there. And so if you hate it, you can always go back.
Okay.
You
Kind of
down?
like a warranty, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a warranty. Money back warranty. So tradition on the show, our guests always give a book recommendation. So which book can you recommend to our viewers?
If you guys have been watching Game of Thrones on TV, I highly recommend that you read the books. They're a lot better than just watching the show. It's like if you watch Harry Potter, but then you read the book, it's completely different.
I always got to read the book first if I'm going to read it, because it's always better than the show. Always better.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so if you really like our channel, don't forget to subscribe.
And then go ahead and leave a comment saying what you think about traveling to Mars and colonizing the planet.
Peace.